Bioeconomy Conference is a nice opportunity to bring together expertise from the technical side, you might call it, of the bioeconomy with economists and other colleagues who are interested in social aspects.
The bioeconomy is the part of the economy that is using mostly modern biological knowledge to produce food, fiber, chemicals, and medicine. A lot of our energy is produced from non-renewable resources. Now we realize that there is a limit to what we can use with non-renewables. We have to shift back to use renewable. And using biological processes is very important. The first generation biofuel consists of ethanol and biodiesel. People now are conducting research on second generation biofuel that will be cellulosic. Much of the conference will be devoted to understand what the state of second generation biofuel and how policy can affect it.
I think the future of biofuels is going to be tied very much to what happens to the RFS2. If that stays in place without a lot of EPA waivers, I think there's a very bright future for biofuels.
If EPA and Congress and the United States really wants to expand use of biofuels, EPA should follow the RFS volumes and increase them. That creates an incentive for investment to take place. The investments would look like new gasoline stations would put in E85 pumps, high ethanol blend pumps, in locations where the flex fuel vehicles are located, so mainly urban areas around the United States.
If we want to expand biofuel right now, without assuming that technological growth would occur and more cheaper feedstocks or something like that, which I wouldn't anticipate because already there's a lot of competition between food and fuel and there's not a lot of land for increasing production of feedstocks of biofuel. And that means that the only way we can have more biofuels is for mandates, but these mandates might be very detrimental to fuel consumers, which might lead to a lot of consumer loss and welfare loss.
The couple of factors are going to determine the future of biofuels in the U.S. One of these is the availability of a technology that can be produced at commercial scale and be competitive, or something that can be supported with reasonable policies in the U.S. But on the demand side, we don't have really any incentives at the moment. The current Farm Bill does not provide any incentives to set up new E85 stations, nor do we have any incentives really to encourage more purchase of flex fuel cars.
The corn ethanol is a mature industry. It's basically not going to grow. So the future depends on cellulosic biofuels. Progress has been substantial in technical development of cellulosic biofuels, but the uncertainty is still very, very high, and it's going to be hard to get investment. And it won't happen without some sort of incentives. And what we find is that incentives that help stabilize the price, that help produce a contract for the product, are the ones that are most important.
I think the question with second generation biofuels is still very much a question of when, not if. So I'm very convinced that these things are coming, that we are going to get to the right place, that the right economics are going to emerge. But like with every new technology development, it's something that takes time and effort to get there.
One of the most important things that's happened recently in the general biofuels or bioproducts economy is that after, you might get a 50-year delay, we finally have the first commercial facilities starting up around the world where the companies are taking things like wheat straw and corn stover and making cellulosic biofuels from it. That's a very important development because there's been a kind of a sense in the field that, because it's taken so long to get ready to do this, that there's some fundamental problem. And so we've crossed over that, and now I think we're actually going to get to see it work at scale, and that's going to throw up all kinds of interesting new problems. There's going to be a lot of learning by doing.
Now it comes down to politics, social factors, acceptance, economics. The social and political factors, I think, have to do with a lot of misunderstanding around what next generation biofuels can do. There's a lot of perception that biofuels will interfere with food production to drive up food prices, that they will incur large changes in greenhouse gas from land use change, and our analysis shows that those fears are largely unfounded, although there is a potential for abuse in any system, and certainly things have to be done in a careful way.
The takeaway point is that on biotechnology we have made good progress and there's a tremendous potential ahead as long as we integrate it with management systems and other modern plant breeding techniques. But I also think that we've got to be thinking much more clearly about the climate variables, weather variables, and particularly about extreme weather situations, because that's the area I see as needing to be very careful of and how it affects the future.
Europe relies much more on diesel than gasoline relative to the US, and they have a big program to produce biodiesel from soybean, rapeseed. They also produce ethanol from wheat and corn. Generally, they are less efficient than the United States, and the greenhouse gas emission from their biodiesel are much higher, and the subsidy of the industry is much higher. European countries obviously are interested in a second generation biofuel. In Italy, they build a second generation plant, and there are a lot of research effort all over Europe.
Brazil is a pioneer in producing sugarcane ethanol. The challenge we are facing now is that the competition with fossil fuels. Brazil recently discovered a huge amount of oil there, and the policies currently do not incentivize biofuels. The taxation on gasoline nowadays is lower than it used to be.
There is a lot of interest in biodiesel in Nepal from different stakeholders. The policy is there. So what was not very clear is that the private sector is very weak in Nepal, and government doesn't have a capacity to invest a huge investment because there is a huge lack of infrastructure. If the private sectors come up, there might be opportunity for them, because this type of economic analysis shows there is a clear benefit, having this biodiesel produced from the top of Nepal.
Genetic modified crop has been heavily used in corn, soybean and cotton. About 25% of the corn land in the world and more than 50% of the soybean and cotton are used with GM variety. GM varieties contribute to reduction of the price of corn by 10 to 20%, soybean by 20 to 40%, and cotton even more. And this reduction in prices are really helpful because they enable poor people to consume this product. In developing countries, the adoption of GM, except cotton, has been quite limited because of heavy regulations. So some of the sessions that we have were on adoption of GM varieties, to what extent they have been adopted, and the potential in South Africa, in China, and in India.
Well, fortunately, the government, in theory, is very much in favor of it, but the problem is that not all government departments are as enthusiastic about it. We found that when international companies come in with new varieties, that's not a problem, but it's when locally produced varieties or even new crops are tried that they are reluctant to even make a decision. The fact that we've got insect resistance is a big plus, and herbicide resistance means that there is improvement in food security. But we've got this problem of maize streak virus, and this has been sitting in a glass house for the last 7 years. And that would make a huge impact, not only in South Africa, but the rest of Africa where it's prevalent. So this inability to make a decision is having a huge impact on livelihoods.
In China, the thing that may well push for the adoption of GM corn, at least, is that as China's grown more and more wealthy, they eat more meat, the pigs have to eat more corn, and so China's been importing more and more corn, and that could be a driver towards the adoption of GM corn, at least in China. The GM rice is going in the other direction because less and less people are eating rice.
A lot of research is taking place in India in biotechnology. Many of the food crops are at a very advanced stage of development, but for food crops it seems India is still not ready. There are reasons beyond scientific reasons. There are political economy reasons. And the main reason it seems from Indian farmers is that they are afraid that introduction of GM crops or GM food crops will lead to monopolization of seed industry by US multinational corporations.